What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Fight Take here with Cameron and Edgar. Today we're gonna be talking about we have a great weekend of fights coming up between PFL versus Bellator, that big card, champion versus champion kind of card that a lot of people are excited about, and of course a great UFC fight night in Mexico. So it got a lot to look forward to going into the weekend. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Excited to be here. And I'm ready for this weekend. Well, we got two good cards coming up and yeah, should be good.
Yeah, I'm excited for these two cards too. They should be pretty exciting.
Yeah, so let's not waste too much time. Let's jump right into it. I mean, I think we'll start with Bellator versus PFL, because that's where the kind of big news of today came out that Francis Ngannou will be making his return to MMA against the winner of Renan Ferreira versus Ryan Bader. What do you guys make of that news? I think both these guys would be cannon fodder for Ngannou at this point. This is a decent main event, but Ngannou's on a different level. But of course, I'm going to be very excited to see Francis fight in MMA again.
I think Ngannou coming back is gonna be good. He is getting a little older, but you gotta remember in with the heavier weight classes, they have a longer what's the word? Longevity
Yeah,
compared
and
to the
also
smaller guys.
Francis hasn't taken a whole lot of damage. He's not a guy that's been knocked out a bunch of times, so I think he can still have a lot of success.
I don't think
You
he's ever
know,
been knocked out either.
yeah, and just even in his fights, a lot of his fights end quickly. It's not wars. Besides the fight with Stipe, I'd say he really hasn't taken too much damage at all in many of his fights. So yeah, but let's jump right into this matchup. I mean, we got a striker versus grappler matchup here. I mean, Bader, of course, is very well rounded, and is a true veteran of the sport. Almost 40 professional fights now. And Renan Ferreira is the reigning, PFL heavyweight champion. Won that, won the playoffs, won the tournament. He's a dangerous knockout artist on the feet. He's gonna have a big size advantage. Bader's gonna look to get inside, use the wrestling. I tend to favor Bader being able to get that done, but I also think there's a real good chance he gets clipped, so it's a hard fight to call. But yeah, should be a good main event. What do you guys think of Renan Ferreira? You've been able to see him fight before?
If I'm going to be completely honest, I've never seen him fight. So, but um, I mean, from what you just said, knockout artist or whatever. I mean, it sounds exciting. Obviously, I know Ryan Bader, so uh, we've seen him get knocked out, knocked down a couple times in his career. So, uh, I think it'll be interesting. I could definitely need to look up Ferreira though.
Yeah, I mean, Ferreira's huge. He's like 6'7", 6'8", something like that. He's gonna have a big size advantage in all his fights, pretty much, and he has real knockout power. He's won a lot of fights by knockout in the PFL, and only one loss inside the PFL. A couple that earlier in his career, but this can be a really tough fight for Ryan Bader. And kind of the more I think about it, the more I think he might get caught here. We've seen him caught a couple of times in the past couple of years in Bellator, and then earlier in his UFC career, several times. Um, Very tough fight to call in the main event, but a good main event, and the winner, gets to get knocked out by Francis Ngannou. Co-main event, I'm not sure will be as competitive. Impa Kasaganai, who, was for me one of the feel-good stories of 2023 in MMA. Guy got cut from the UFC, then wins $1 million kind of out of nowhere in the PFL, dominated that light heavyweight tournament. But he takes on Johnny Eblen, Kasaganai fighting back at middleweight where he fought in the UFC. And Eblen's a stud, he's one of the guys out of ATT. You'll hear from a lot of, the higher ups at ATT that this guy's one of the best in the world. Elite grappling, undefeated record, and he's coming as a heavy favorite against Impa Kasaganai. What do you guys make of Johnny Evelyn? Where would you think he would fit into the UFC as a welterweight, middleweight, excuse me?
I think Johnny Eblin is solid, and from what his teammates are saying, he's over there training with the Dustin Poiriers, the Masvidal when Masvidal was active. He's solid. He's over there doing good work in or what was Bellator. I think we should see him in the UFC in the future.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, he's people say he's up there, and I agree. I think he's definitely up there too. I don't know where I'd put him in the UFC because I mean, it's just I mean middleweight's just a confusing and it's a confusing era right now. So I don't know. I think he'd definitely put up some good fights over there though in the UFC.
Yeah, still hasn't really been tested. I mean, besides the fight with Gegard Mousasi, definitely, that's a big feather to have in his cap. But I don't know. I mean, I think maybe he could give some even the guys at the top of the division a lot of problems from what I've seen, and I think he's gonna steamroll Kasaganai. Um, and you guys think Impa keeps the hype up, or are you guys rolling with Eblin?
Yeah,
I'm
I'm going
rolling
with
with Johnny
Eblin.
Edlin.
Yeah.
Uh, I think we all agree there, yeah. Another this is a banger fight. The next one featured bout Patricio Pitbull. Originally he was supposed to take on the Peruvian who I'm very high on, Jesus Pinedo, featherweight champion, featherweight, tournament winner. But instead he's fighting Gabriel Braga who lost to Pinedo in his last fight in the championship, I believe. And so he was supposed to fight Aaron Pico. Now he's moving up, taking on Patricio Pitbull. So, I mean, he goes from a hard fight to a harder fight. You guys know the legend of Patricio Pitbull, arguably Bellator's best ever fighter. But in the recent couple of years, he's had a tough time. He moved down in weight class and lost a tough fight against Sergio Pettis. And his last fight, he got finished in that Ryzen versus Bellator event. So he's looking for redemption here. I think he'll be just, a way higher level fighter. Um, Braga has had a lot of success in the PFL. He has some great wins on his resume. Guys like Marlon Moraes. He even has a win over Pineda earlier in their careers. But Pitbull's, a much more experienced martial artist, and I believe will be on a much higher level. So I'll be rolling with Patricio Pitbull to turn it around and show he's still got some stuff left in the tank. What about you guys?
Yeah, I'm rolling with Patricio too. He's an OG, and yeah, he's got really good wins over good people. He's a clean striker. He has good jiu-jitsu, well-rounded fighter. Yeah, I'm rolling with Patricio.
Yeah, I haven't really been keeping up with him too much. Last thing I really remember about him is when he lost to AJ McKee. Because I remember hearing he was like unstoppable and this and that. I mean, I don't really keep up much with Bellator PFL, but I just know, like you said, he's a legend over there. So just gotta roll with him too.
Yeah, and then the next fight on the card, I don't think will be too competitive. Ray Cooper, he is, one of PFL's greatest ever, a great knockout artist and a tough fighter, but he's taking on Jason Jackson, who, in my opinion, is one of the top welterweights in the world. Cooper, his Achilles heel has always kind of been the grappling, and Jackson's a hell of a grappler. We talked about how some of these guys don't have the greatest names on their resume, but if you look on the resume of Jason Jackson, Yaroslav Amosov, who was 27-0 before they fought, Douglas Lima, Paul Daly, Neiman Gracie, Benson Henderson. I mean, the winning streak he's been on, even Jordan Mean to a lesser extent. That's such an impressive winning streak, really. Um, and he's gonna roll Ray Cooper here. I think he'll probably get the fight finished if he wants to. He's gonna have a big advantage on the ground and in the cardio. Just needs to avoid that big shot of Cooper. But yeah, I think Jackson's gonna flatline him. And I really think Jason Jackson's one of the top welterweights in the world. I don't know if he's on the level of Leon and um but even thinking about it right here, I think him versus Bilal Muhammad is probably a competitive fight. Um, Shavkat, of course, but I think a lot of versus almost anyone else. Even if you put him against someone like Ian Gary, I think Jason Jackson would school Ian Gary. I think this guy could definitely hang in the top 10, maybe even the top five of the UFC welterweight. So I'm a big fan of Jason Jackson, and his last performance especially was incredible.
Yeah, Jason Jackson's an OG. He's got a solid resume. His last fight for the belt, that was crazy. I had money on that Ukrainian that he was fighting, but dude, his takedown defense was fucking perfect. wasn't getting taken down, and he to top it off, Jason's a fucking tank. That motherfucker can crack.
Yeah, he's strong too, just physically strong, a beast. And I think he's gonna give Cooper a lot of problems here.
I don't know who to roll with in this. I mean, I don't really know much about Jason Jackson once again, but I do know of Ray Cooper. I hear a lot of good things about Ray Cooper, so I guess I'll be the odd one out and go with Ray Cooper here.
Yeah, well, he's a big underdog, so you should put some money on it. Um, Maybe win some money. Ray Cooper, we've seen him pull off big upsets. He did it to Rory McDonald back in the day a few years ago, but I don't think Jason Jackson's gonna put up a performance like Rory McDonald did that night. Another fight that has the potential to not be super competitive, Vadim Nemkov, another guy on a crazy winning streak, makes his return up to heavyweight, fighting Mateus Scheffel. It's a little confusing here what they did with the heavyweights, giving Ryan Bader, I guess, who's the active heavyweight champ, the shot against Ferreira, and Nemkov, kind of the lower level opponent, even though Kapalozza is a former champ as well, I believe, former tournament winner, but a little past his prime here. Nemkov, has a win over Ryan Bader. Um, so should be the rightful, top heavyweight from Bellator, but it is what it is. Nemkov on a crazy winning streak, hasn't lost since 2016. So 8 years unbeaten. Dominant in Bellator, can do it all. And he's gonna overwhelm Bruno Capelozza, I believe. But Capelozza, he's a typical heavyweight with a lot of power, so you got to be careful always, especially with him. Funny enough, these guys have actually fought in Ryzen before at the similar times in their career. So this is a matchup we could have seen a lot earlier, but we're getting it now. But I expect Nemkov to be too much here. I'm a big fan of Nemkov. And once again, this is another fighter I think could fare very well at the very top of the UFC in his respective weight class. And for him, weight class is because he fights in two.
Yeah, I'm rolling with Nemkov for that fight too. He's solid, and I don't know if he still is, but I know he was training with Fedor, and Fedor's a legend in the sport. So I gotta roll with Nemkov too.
Yeah, he's like a prodigy of Fedor.
I'll go with Nimkov here too. I mean, his resume is pretty impressive. Just the big wins over a lot of huge people. So I mean, yeah, I mean it's just kind of obvious. I'll just go with Nimkov.
Yeah, but you can never discount a knockout at heavyweight. So Capelozza is still very dangerous. And the next one, we get a fun one at light heavyweight. Two UFC veterans, kind of household names in the sport. Thiago Santos taking on Yoel Romero. At one point, these guys were both known as devastating finishers. Now both a little past their prime. Yoel Romero, really, really old. I don't know how old he is at this point, but 46. Wow. That's crazy. Still fighting at 46. But we know the type of freak of nature Yoel Romero is. This guy is maybe not human. Really, 46 years old and still fighting. Thiago Santos, this is going to be his second fight in the PFL. He really struggled towards the end of his UFC run, but at one point got all the way to the pinnacle, a title shot against John Jones. He should get the win here, I think, against Yoel Romero, but you can never discount Yoel Romero. Do you guys think this is going to be an action-packed fight or a slower paced fight between the two guys, kind of both weary of the power?
I think it'll be a little slow. I mean, Yoel Romero's definitely slowed down in the past couple years. I I'm also going to go with Santos here. Like you said, I mean, he did slow down too. Obviously, he's 40, but uh, I think he'll get it done over Yoel Romero.
I gotta roll with Yoel.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of Yoel. I really fuck with him. But
me
he is
too, of
getting up
course.
there in age, just like you said, Fitz. He's 46, and he's starting to age. He didn't look like this a few years ago, but he's really starting to fucking age now. And he hasn't looked too well either in his past two fights. But I still got to roll the OL. They both crack, but Yoel's a lot more explosive, and I think he's more durable too.
Yeah, I mean, Yoel, I definitely think is live here. You got to look at who he was taking on his last fight. Nemkov, who we're talking about as one of the best guys in the world, really. So for him to be fighting that level of competition at his age is crazy. And Thiago Santos still, a very skilled fighter, not a step down in competition by any means. But at the same time, it kind of is really, and Yoel might be able to take advantage of that. And I would love to see Yoel get one more win, or who knows how many more wins, as he's 46 years old. That's so insane.
Yeah, it's honestly crazy seeing a guy born in the 1970s still competing when there's guys like my age out there. It's weird.
Yeah, and then finally, first card on the main card, arguably, in my opinion, might be the best fight, most competitive fight of the whole night. AJ McKee takes on Clay Collard. Clay Collard, veteran of the game, great boxer, unreal toughness. AJ McKee, the deal with him, the prodigy, one of Bellator's most shining stars. Obviously suffered that tough loss against Patricio Pitbull, but Pitbull's, the greatest ever in Bellator. Um, McKee, I think over the years has kind of lost a little hype. When he first finished Patricio Pitbull with that guillotine, he had so much hype, really across the entire sport. And then lost the decision, and some of his performances since then has been a little lackluster. Some close decisions that could have gone either way if you ask some people. But I think he should be the more complete fighter here against Clay Collard, and I think he'll really look to make a statement with a lot of eyes on him here.
Yeah, AJ McKee, he didn't look too good his last fight. He was getting humped and he had no answer for anything off his back. But I got to roll with McKee, solid striker, even though Clay's a vet.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of surprised he went out there. Not really surprised, but when he went out there and lost Pitbull after that first fight, lost the second one. I thought he was just going to be like the next guy over there, but I mean, you can't write him out. Like you said, this will be a good one. I really don't know who to go here. This will be interesting. I don't know. I'll just say McKee too, because yeah, he's just like that sometimes. So
Yeah, I agree. Definitely, one of the closer fights on the card, and should be a competitive. Hopefully, we get like a brawl. And then also fighting on this card, not really. They all kind of have just cans. I mean, Aaron Pico to a lesser extent. He's taking on a vet in Henry Corrales, but also Biagio Ali Walsh and Clarissa Shields. Two big names the PFL has on their roster. So always excited to see those guys compete. But yeah, that covers it as far as the PFL Bellator card. But give me who are you most excited to see, or what fight are you most excited to see on the card? For me, it's probably gonna be I'll go Santos versus Yoel. Two UFC kind of legends, especially Yoel. Two UFC title challengers, both guys with explosive finishing. I think they'll make it a barn burner.
I'm gonna have to go with Johnny Evelyn and Impa Kasagane. I still can never pronounce it right, but
That was
I mean,
pretty good.
I just, I just enjoy watching Johnny Evelyn. So, kind of a fan of his a little bit. So I'll just rock with Johnny Evelyn as my favorite fight on here, most exciting one.
Yeah, I'm going with Johnny Evelyn too. I was gonna say Aaron Pico, but I think Aaron Pico's gonna fuck up his opponent. Aaron Pico's got that solid wrestling, but Johnny Evelyn's fight should be a little more competitive.
Yeah, Pico for a long time has been like one of my top prospects. We still got to see him take that step up, but this kid is special, and I think one day if they can do that Pico versus McKee matchup, that's a pretty huge fight. That could be if they build it right and both those guys have continued success. But yeah, shout out to PFL, doing big things. This should be their biggest card ever. We'll see how it goes, and we have a stacked day of fight Saturday because also we have a UFC Fight Night Mexico. This is a card a lot of people are excited for. Ironically, it's a top heavy card, meaning that the best fights are really just the main event and the co-main event. But there are no heavy fighters on this card. The highest fight is taking place at 155, which is crazy. No welterweights, no middleweights, no light heavyweights, no heavyweights. One of the rare occasions I think you see that in the UFC, but I think it might have been done intentionally for two factors. One, a lot of Mexican nationals are on this card, and there aren't too many Mexicans in the higher weight classes. And also, this fight is taking place in Mexico City, with that crazy altitude where, the heavyweights always, of course, are going to gas out. So we might just get, more competitive fights with less, sloppy gas fighters. But that being said, it is a decent card, kind of a weird card. There's like three rematches on this card for fights that all ended in weird ways. The main event and co-main event are both rematches in fights that ended due to shoulder injuries. Kind of crazy. And then a lot of flyweight fights on the prelims, but some very solid names throughout. The return of Raul Rosas, who is one of the brightest stars in the UFC, brightest emerging stars, and let's get right into this card. We're gonna start with the prelims, work our way up. And the first fight of the card, it has one of, in my opinion, the best fighters on the entire card. Featured one of the top debutants of last year, Muhammad Naimov. This guy came to the UFC as a big underdog, up a weight class, took out Jamie Malarkey, then moved down to featherweight, his real weight class, and took out Nathaniel Wood, who in my opinion is a top tier talent fighter. And this guy Naimov is a real, I think he's going to be in the top 15 within the year, pushing towards that top 10. This is a definite step down in competition against Eric Silva, who's a credentialed fighter, won on the Contender Series, and he's a vet, coming in his late 30s. He's more of a grappling fighter, and I think Naimov is going to maul him and really do some damage with the striking if he gets a chance. But yeah, a little interested that this is only the first fight on the card because Naimov is definitely one of the highest level fighters on this card, and he should steamroll here. Are you guys fans of this guy, Muhammad Naimov? How do you rate him as a prospect?
So I actually haven't seen him fight, but from when you said he beat the Nathaniel Wood and you think that he's gonna crack the top 15 by next year, I'll definitely be tuning in.
Yeah, and another one of the most successful debuts of the UFC last year. Funny enough, this came in a loss, was Felipe Dos Santos. He's coming in with a ton of hype. If you guys remember, he had that really close, exciting fight with Manal Cape on short notice, and that really put him on the map. He's taken on the tough Mexican Victor Altamirano, former LFA champ, who's been up and down in the UFC, but has fought really tough competition throughout the years. His last fight, a tough loss to Tim Elliott, where he really got, dominated with the grappling. And Felipe Dos Santos is coming in here as a heavy favorite against Altamirano, so he has really earned a lot of hype after his debut, and it's deserved because he put on a great performance against Manal Cape, and we know the level of fighter Manal Cape is, top 5 in the world. So to go out there on short notice and put on that war, it's really impressive, and a lot of people are backing him. But I think Altamirano is definitely live here. I think he's a very underrated fighter, tough fighter, and he might be able to pull out the big upset. What did you guys make of Dos Santos in his debut against Manal Cape? You remember that fight? That was a great performance by him, even in a loss, and he has a lot of hype now.
That fight was a fucking war. I remember that fight. Felipe is really good on the feet. He's got good jiu-jitsu. He's a little chinny, but he'll still come forward. He doesn't give a fuck. He kind of gives off Charles vibes. They're both
Yeah.
ready for the chaos.
Yeah, and then kind of a step down in competition, in skill, I'd say. No real top talent in this fight as far as I can see. Luis Rodriguez, he's been on a good streak, but he lost on the Contender Series a few years back against Jerome Rivera, who was one of the worst UFC fighters of all time. This is a guy who got destroyed in all of his UFC fights, and he got into the UFC by beating this guy Luis Rodriguez. Since then, though, he's gone undefeated in Lux, which is Mexico's biggest fighting promotion, or one of their top fighting promotions right now. He was young when he made that Contender Series appearance, so he has the time to have made advancements in his game, but it's hard to tell because he's fought a lot of lower level competition. Dennis Bondar, fighting out of Ukraine, also a guy it's tough to make a read on because his UFC career has been really weird. In his first fight, he got injured. His shoulder kind of popped out against Malcolm Gordon, and then his last fight, he got put out to sleep really badly by a slam, and ate a lot of follow-up shots after that too on the ground. So that was a really, really tough knockout for him. Lost to sustain, probably took a lot of damage. But I still think he's a pretty decent fighter. He will have a grappling advantage here, I think, and could even be sharper on the feet. Just really hard to tell, and I think we're just gonna have to wait and see how both these fighters look. Yeah, and the next fight is definitely a better one, I'd say. It's kind of a striker versus grappler. This should definitely be higher up on the card, in my opinion. Should be on the main card because both these guys are right outside the top 15. I think whoever wins this will be right, fighting for a top 15 fight in their next two fights. Farasiam has been on a really hot streak in his last two fights, and especially in his last fight against Jai Herbert, outstruck him really easily. And we know how good Jai Herbert is as a striker. Puelas, on the other hand, has taken some time off after his loss to Dan Hooker. That was a really tough finish. But before that, he had a lot of hype. He was undefeated in the UFC. Oh no, he had one loss in the UFC, but was on a 5-fight win streak. He's known as a submission artist, really. He's known for those knee bars, those leg attacks. He's a specialist. These guys have done some training together at Kill Cliff. But I think Ziam's really going to be way higher level on the feet and pick him apart as long as he can stay away from those leg locks. So I think Ziam will get the job done here and expect him to put on a pretty good performance, honestly, and kind of beat up on Claudio Puelas.
Yeah, I think Zion should get the job done too. Claudio's giving off Ryan Hall vibes in that Dan Hooker fight. And all it took was a few front kicks to knock his air out for him to say he's out. But his jiu-jitsu is good, like you said. He's solid with those leg locks and knee bars. But if he didn't work on that wrestling, he's not going to be able to use that jiu-jitsu to an advantage.
Yeah, definitely. And then definitely I think this fight should be higher up between those two because these guys are both, UFC caliber fighters and gonna be, staples in the lightweight division for a long time. But I think Ziam's kind of on the way up. Puelas might be heading down. Um, and I'm excited for Ziam's future. I think this guy is really one of the most talented strikers in the division, to be honest. And yeah, let's just keep it moving. Next fight is going to be the first of three rematches we have. Edgar Shairaev takes on Daniel Lacerdo. This fight ended in controversy. I don't know if you guys saw it, but Shairaev had the submission pretty much all locked up. But Lacerdo never tapped or anything. The referee stopped the fight while Lacerdo was still, perfectly fine. So they got to run it back. Lacerda hasn't been successful really in the UFC. This probably is his last shot. Definitely is his last shot. 0-4 in the UFC. This guy's first rounder bust. And especially in Mexico City, I really don't think his cardio is going to hold up at all. Shira's, is a grappler, but I'm really not all that impressed with him. In the first fight, I actually picked Lacerda to get the upset done. This fight, he's even a bigger underdog, and I still think he's live to get, a big first round finish. But after seeing how the first fight was playing out, you got to go with Shires. I think he's gonna find the submission or dominate with the grappling and definitely get him out of there as soon as Lacerda exhausts. But yeah, not the greatest fight, and another, not the highest level in the matchup. Another flyweight fight in the next fight. Jesus Aguilar, who's coming off a big knockout win against Shannon Ross, takes on Mike Taus Mendoza. Mendoza has dropped 2 in the UFC, 0-2, but against very tough competition. Went to decision against Javid Bashara up a weight class and took on Nate Maness. He was looking for a leg lock there and got finished by the ground and pound. Aguilar is kind of a shorter fighter. He's going to be at a big height and reach disadvantage in most of his fights. But this guy's a brawler. He showed it in his last fight. Just went looking for the knockout right away and found it. And I'm a fan of him. I think he's gonna pull off the slight upset here, and I think he's just gonna be able to make it his type of fight, and will get the job done in his home country. And then another Brazil versus Mexico matchup here. Christian Quinones, he had a bit of a hype as a prospect before his last fight, but in his last fight he got dominated by Huang Kang, got clubbed and subbed pretty much. And he's taken on Raoni Barcelos. This guy's a real veteran. At one point he was kind of like the dark horse of the bantamweight division. With his age though, he's really faded in my opinion, not the same fighter he once was. However, I think he still can pose a lot of problems for Quinones. Really, despite him, kind of getting older, slowing down, Quinones, I think, will have an advantage with the speed, definitely, and on the feet. But if Barcelos is able to use the wrestling, I think, which he's very for Brazilian, he has a lot of wrestling credentials. I think if he gets the fight to the ground, he'll find a finish. And I've got to go with Barcelos here. Although, he has let me down over the past couple of years, to be honest. I was very high on Barcelos at one point.
I think Barcelos is solid too. He is getting a little older. We saw him get chinned against Umar. Those chin's not really there anymore. But if he uses his experience to help him get to this fight, then he should do it. But Quinones yeah, he is younger. He'll be quicker. He'll be more durable too. So I gotta roll with Quinones.
Yeah, and that covers it for the prelims. Do you guys have a fighter to watch out for, a favorite fight, anything? What's your highlight of the prelims?
My highlight's gonna be that Felipe and Luis Rodriguez fight.
Definitely. And Cam?
If I'm being completely honest, I don't know, but from how you were talking about uh, Nemov, I mean, he sounds pretty exciting. I looked him up and read a little bit about him. It's literally the opening fight, but I kind of want to watch him, see what he does, see how he is. So I guess that'll be my fight to watch.
Yeah, I'd say Neymar is definitely my most confident pick on the prelims, but also, you could parlay that with Ziam, I would say would be my best bet for the prelims, a two-team parlay between those two. As far as some underdogs, I think Alto Moreno, like I said, he's a hefty underdog. He's very live. And if you want more of a, reasonable underdog, I think Jesus Aguilera can get the job done against Mendoza, and that should be a close fight either way. So you might as well take the underdog. And then we'll get right into the main card. Maybe my favorite fight on the night, might be the most competitive fight on the night, is coming up in the first fight. Manuel Torres, he is my top Mexican prospect on the card. Out of all these Mexicans fighting, we know the Brandon Moreno and Yair Rodriguez, of course, but even, above Zell Huber, above Rosas, above Yasmin is Manuel Torres. For me, this guy is a finisher. Most of his fights come in by way of first round knockout. Really, we haven't seen him go outside of the first round anytime recently. And his last knockout was the most impressive. Knocked out Nicholas Mato with a sick elbow. I hope you guys have seen this knockout. If not, you got to go watch it right away. But it was a devastating elbow, and he takes on the tough Chris Duncan, fighting out of Scotland. Duncan also coming off the Contender Series, has been successful in the UFC, against pretty stiff competition too. He had a close fight against Omar Morales, and in his last fight used the grappling to exploit Yanal Ashmouche, the Israeli fighter. But Duncan's a guy we see take a lot of damage in a fight. He's a guy who gets hit and then kind of comes back, whereas the guy's down. And if he's able to survive against Torres, you might see that game plan work. He trains out of ATT, very, very, great gym, of course. We already know that, but I'm very high on Manuel Torres, on the striking of him, and I think he's going to connect. Duncan's a guy, like I said, we see him get hit, And I think if Manuel Torres hits you, he's gonna put you out. So I'm expecting to see a first round knockout here.
Manuel Torres is one of my favorite fighters too. I know he's fighting at lightweight, which is pretty competitive division, but he's got some solid Muay Thai, and that step in elbow he got his last fight, that was a nasty knockout. So I'll be looking forward to that fight for that fight.
Yeah. I guess I'll have to go with Torres too. Um, like you said, Chris Duncan gets touched up a little bit. I mean, have seen him get finished though. Uh, but yeah, I mean, this should be a good one on there.
Yeah, starting off the main card right, and Duncan's gonna look to extend the fight. We don't know how Torres really is gonna look outside of the first round, and we've seen him take submission losses, but I don't think he's gonna be able to do that to Torres. I think that was when Torres was a little younger in his career, a little greener, and I think since coming into the UFC, he's really evolved as a fighter. And the sole women's fight on the card is next. Girl, a lot of people are high on Yasmin Jojui is taking on Sam Hughes, 8-5 Sam Hughes, one of the more lower level girls. A lot of people are favoring Yasmin to get the job done here. I'm not as high as on Yasmin as a lot of people I think are. She's coming into this fight as a big favorite. Despite getting, starched in her last fight against Denise Gomes, which I think is, questionable. Before that, she was on a good winning streak. She was undefeated before that. So you can't take too much away from her for having a bad night. And Sam Hughes, just not the greatest fighter. She has some wins in the UFC. Um, even has a UFC finish, but anytime she's gotten any, relative step up, she's, not been able to get the job done. So I expect Yasmin to bounce back here after the first loss of her career, and I'm sure the crowd will really be behind her fighting in Mexico.
I haven't seen Yasmin fight. I should watch some tape on her before Saturday. But yeah, she's gonna have a whole crowd. Fighting in Mexico. It's the motherland. She'll have a whole crowd behind her.
Yeah, just tough to back her, as such a big favorite here, no value on that line. Um, but let's go right into the next fight. Definitely you guys are gonna have something to say. Raul Rosas Jr. We all know the deal with him, youngest fighter in the UFC, youngest fighter to ever fight in the UFC. Taking on Ultimate Fighter winner Ricky Turcios. So this is definitely, let's make it very clear in his last fight, Rosas had a can in Terrence Mitchell. He knocked him out in the first round, and that was a great bounce back after, the first loss of his career. He had that tough fight against um C-Rod, Christian Rodriguez. But C-Rod is no joke. He's a great, great fighter. Rosas had success in that fight. It's not like he got steamrolled. It went to decision, and he kind of gassed out, which is, the only worry I have here, fighting at that altitude. It definitely, is a question if his gas tank is going to hold up. But I think he learned a lot from that C-Rod fight, and he'll learn how to, control his gas tank. Tercios is a well-rounded fighter, great grappling, had that great run on Tough, and has fought some decent competition. But I'm just really not too high on him. He doesn't really have a lot of finishing ability. He has slick striking, but it's not great. And I think Rosas just might be able to dominate him in the grappling. I think Tercios takes a lot of risks, and Tercios, even though he might be the higher level, jiu-jitsu black belt, Rosas I think has a stronger wrestling, and I think he'll look for when Tercio is trying to counter him, trying to sweep him, and he'll take advantage of a mistake and get a finish. So I'm gonna go with the problem child, Raul Rosas to continue building up his hype and get another win in the UFC. But it's tough to really say. I have a lot of question marks. Tercios is no joke. What do you guys think of this fight?
I think this is gonna be second, third best fight of the card. Ricky has a pretty wild style. I know he fought on the Ultimate Fighter, and I liked watching his fights on the Ultimate Fighter. I fuck with Ricky. He's cool. I think uh I think the difference in their strength is gonna play a factor. Ricky's a little older, so he's got that grown man strength compared to Raul, he's fucking my age. He's got fucking teenager strength. I think that's gonna play a big factor in this fight. This should be a good fight though. I don't know who to back. So I don't know. It's gonna be close.
Yeah, I think everyone's a big fan of Ricky Turcios or Turcios. I just think Raul's wrestling will kind of tire him out, even though uh, Ricky's uh, a jiu-jitsu fighter. But I mean, like you said, I loved watching him on Tough. Uh, Very interesting season. I I think I'll just have to stick with Roses though. I know he's still has a point to prove ever since his decision loss, but uh, I see him as definitely moving pretty high up in the rankings here in the next couple of years. So I'll just stick with Rowe.
Yeah, yeah. I think Raul was ultimately going to be able to find submission here. But if this fight plays out over 3 rounds, Tercios likely, I think, gets a decision win. But I'm very excited to see how it plays out. Um, and another, let's speaking of prospects, this is definitely, a shining example of two of the top prospects at lightweight. Daniel Zellhuber takes on Francisco Prado. Both these guys Latin American. Both these guys have had success in this UFC. Both these guys only one loss on their roster. Zellhuber took a really bad loss in his UFC debut to Trey Ogden, but since then, 2 solid wins. Looked better in every fight against Lando and then against Christian Giagos. Prado also had a really tough start to his UFC career, losing to Jamie Malarkey, but we know Malarkey's a tough fighter and had a great win in his last fight against Atman Azaitar, knocked him out real early. They had some bad blood going into that fight too, and he got the job done. Both these guys are strikers. I think if anyone's gonna mix it up with the grappling, it will be Zellhuber. Zellhuber is definitely gonna be the longer fighter here. I think he'll try to use his reach to his advantage. He doesn't want to be on the inside against Prado. Prado also one of the youngest fighters in the UFC with Rosas, only like 21 years old. So keep in mind he's likely improving very much every fight. And this is a tough one to pick. I'm very back and forth, and really I don't think I'm officially decided yet because I think Prado is very live as an underdog. I was definitely initially leading Zellhuber, but yeah, it's this is a very exciting fight, and you guys definitely don't want to miss it. One of the fights that could definitely be fight of the night.
Yeah, I'm rocking Zellhuber in this one. I just find him pretty exciting, to be honest. He's just an all-around fighter. Uh, Once again, another fighter I feel like just has something to prove here since his loss to Trey Ogden. But it definitely won't be an easy win. I mean, he's taken the tough route. He's not gonna cherry pick it. So, but I'm pretty set on Zellhuber though.
So I haven't seen any of them fight, but it's on the main card. There's no way I'm gonna miss it.
Yeah, and it should hopefully, it'll play out on the feet and could be a back and forth striking battle. Um, yeah, and that's, we'll get right into it. The co-main and main event, both 5 round fights, not something we see too often, especially not on a fight night. So that's something we definitely have to look forward to. Co-main, my most anticipated fight on the card, Yair Rodriguez taking on Brian Ortega. I actually was in Long Island when these guys fought. It was a great card. Was really disappointed to end it how it did, when Ortega suffered that injury. You know, in that fight, I remember Yair having a lot of success on the feet, but ultimately Ortega did get the takedown where the fight ended, but it was Yair throwing up submissions off his back that injured Ortega, caused the injury. I'm not sure how likely that is to happen again. Yair having that success off the back, and I think he will look to keep the fight definitely on the feet here against Ortega. We know what T City brings on the ground. We haven't seen T City since his last fight. Ortega has been catching a lot of slack lately because of his inactivity. He still has maintained that high ranking at featherweight, but we just haven't seen him fight. We've seen him come off long layoffs before and look great. If you guys remember against Korean Zombie, he was off a long layoff after the first loss of his career to Holloway, and that was arguably his best performance in his entire career. Rodriguez, of course, in his last fight, he got stopped by Volk, but we know the tank that is Volk, and that was a very tough fight. Volk had a lot of success with the grappling, which is kind of, the recipe to beat Yair is to mix in the wrestling. It's hard to stand with him. Originally, I was very confident in Yair. Yair was one of my most confident picks on the card, but the more I look into it, you can't sleep on Brian Ortega. You can't sleep on the boxing, on the toughness. And I think he could have success. Yair's a guy we've seen fade. I know he trains in Mexico City or somewhere around there, and he trains with that altitude. But we've seen him fade in the past, even in that Volk fight. I feel he faded as the rounds were going on. Um, but yeah, I probably still think Yair is gonna get the job done and even could get a finish against Ortega, could put him out. Um, but I think people should, have a little more respect for Ortega. A lot of the inactivity I don't think has been his fault. But yeah, I'm very excited for this fight. How do you guys see it playing out? Top five matchup at featherweight.
This is going to be a good fight too. The whole card is really good, but this one specifically should be good, especially uh the way their last fight ended off that shoulder injury with Ortega. But, but the thing with Ortega is he has really good offensive boxing, but when it comes to the defense, it's really shit. He gets hit a lot. He doesn't move his head off the center line. He'll have a high guard and just take it, but that's not enough. And we've seen it his last fight with Yair. Yair was tagging him nonstop. And I know Ortega was finding his range too, but Yair's just one step ahead in the striking. And the only way Ortega has success is if he takes it to the ground because jiu-jitsu is his strong suit. But how much wrestling has he worked on? Jiu-jitsu, wrestling, two different things. And Ortega's he's not really known for having the best singles or double legs. I know he got Yair down their last fight to the mat, but he's gonna have to keep doing that over 5 rounds. I think this fight is in altitude. Like that's gonna be fucking tiring. It's gonna be tiring for Yair too, having to defend nonstop since Ortega's not gonna want to stand with him. I mean, who the fuck wants to stand with Yair?
Yeah. I'm so I'm just mixed emotions on this one because like you guys have said, last fight ended shoulder injury, but I still think T City can get it done. I mean, I don't know though because Yair's pretty good fighter. I mean, I don't know. I honestly don't think I can choose right now, but I'm gonna have to. I think I do think a lot of people are overlooking Brian Ortega a little bit, but I don't know. I'm a big fan of both of these guys, especially after his crazy performance against Volk, almost got him with that like that downward guillotine. I mean, or whatever. I mean, I guess I'm just gonna
Mounts and
go.
Gillespie, yeah.
Yeah. So
Who do you got?
I'm just gonna have to go with Yair, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, so all of us on Yair. But yeah, I definitely, agree with what Edgar was saying. You don't want to stand with this guy. He's too deadly on the feet. Yair striking is as elite as we see in the entire UFC. So yeah, that's all of us on the side of Yair and siding with the home crowd guy, and I'm sure the main event's gonna be the same. It's another rematch fight we seen a few years ago between Brandon Moreno versus Brandon Royval. Battle of the Brandons. This fight also ended in the first round. Royval got injured. This was a barn burner for as long as it lasted, and when these two guys are fighting, it's gonna be all out action. Both two of the most exciting fighters in the entire promotion. Both, got beat though by Pantoja in their last fights. Pantoja has beat both of these guys multiple times, which is crazy, just show what level the champion is at. Pantoja, you guys really, I think everyone as a community, we need to put some respect on his name. This is a number one contender fight, arguably, where the champion has beaten the contenders in a total of 5 fights, which is crazy. He's 5-0 against these two guys, against the number one and two contender in the division. That's unheard of, in my opinion. But yeah, let's focus on the people who are fighting. Moreno, some of the best boxing in the UFC, that crazy jab, great grappling, great wrestling, and Royval's a wild man. He's you can never expect anything from Royval besides an exciting fight, and he always looks for the finish. He's a guy who can take a lot of advantage and damage and will still be swinging, still be looking for the finish. But I think Moreno is just a little bit more well-rounded, more technical of a fighter, and a bit better of a fighter at this stage of his career. I think he'll do damage with the jab and just be, find home with his straighter shots. And if there's any grappling exchanges, I think we've already seen it, but he has the advantage over Rival. And as the fight extends, Moreno should look to use the wrestling. How do you guys see the main event playing out? Who's your picks? I gotta back Moreno, but Royval is very tough to pick against.
I'm going Moreno too. I mean, both these guys are still young. I mean, Moreno's 30 and Royval's 31. I mean, this could be even not the last time we see these two fight in this division, but I'm going to stick with Moreno here. I mean, he's just the guy to go for.
I'm going with Moreno too. I think he's gonna really mix it up this fight. And I know that Royval is a black belt, but Moreno seemed to have a little more success against Pantoja when it came to the grappling. Whereas when it was Royval, he didn't really have an answer off his back, and Moreno was able to do a lot more than Royval did against Pantoja. But this should be a good fight. Royval's got that solid boxing, and he's over there training in Colorado, so he has cardio for days. Since this fight is taking place in Mexico City, this should be a war. But I'm backing Moreno. I think I don't think he's gonna stand and bang for too long. I think he's gonna look to mix it up.
I'm going to change my pick on the Yair and Brian Ortega fight. I'm going to go with Ortega. I mean, I was talking good about him,
Yeah,
so I'm going to go with him, by the way. Just wanted to put that out there.
yeah. So not a clean sweep in the main event, in the main two cards. Um what we're really looking forward to, some dissension there. But yeah, should be a great card and will be a great day. Two stack cards. Definitely looking forward to it. Definitely gonna be, betting, of course, the whole day. Make sure you guys stay tuned for some of those picks. Um, and yeah, I think that pretty much covered it, guys. It was a great talking to you about these fights. I can't wait to watch them and recap them together. Um, yeah, in the meantime, stay tuned. Stay checking out the Instagram Fight Take on all social medias. And make sure you definitely, catch the prelims, watch some of the guys we were highlighting. Um, but yeah, good luck, keeping up with all the MMA going on this weekend. And that's it. Thanks, guys.